Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. Man, I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, you know what he be talking about. Talking Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with the hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
It's Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. This Sunday morning, game time as we get ready for a lot of things. Just getting in here, I want to say welcome to episode 300 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast. The show that's covering the sporting HBCU dash for all things HBCU sports from institutions large and small, from the NAIA to the NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs in the business of HBCU sports. We call it HBCU sports pedagogy. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, with my co-host, Mike Washington. Charles Bishop is out on assignment. He's still on the beaches somewhere in Miami, getting ready for game time today. We'll talk a little bit about a game that's going to be played today, a couple of them. But most of what we'll do is we'll spend our first half reviewing the game from yesterday. We'll talk about Southern and all the points that they put up. A couple of other points. We'll talk about Prairie View's big win. We're filming from our home studios and sending the signal live, as we always do, to our distribution network in the beautiful home of Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. Let me go ahead and get it started. Mike, how you doing this morning? You're on mute, Mike. Let me go to you, BJ Jones. How you doing this morning?
Man, so far so good, man. Good morning, late night. It was good to have football back, man. We actually had some games to look at and digest. So good morning. And we got more games today. We got 3 HBCU games today, so can't complain about that.
It's pretty big. That's pretty big when you get in there. Let me just get into the story before we break down some of these scores and things of that nature from the top 10 games like that. What was the biggest statement you saw last night?
It was probably between Tennessee State going the road at Eastern Washington, and had an opportunity to pull that one off. Between Tennessee State and Prairie View. I told people at SWAC Media Day, man, don't sleep on Prairie View. I understand that there were some changes in the program. A lot of those players are still there, and a lot of people had jumped on that Texas Southern hype train about them, potentially representing the West. Prairie View put an end to that last night, so they were impressed with Prairie View and Coach Bubba McDowell and their staff over there.
Yeah, that was in it. Let me go ahead and get it out. I might do it again for Mike so he can make sure that he heard. But let me apologize to all the Prairie View A&M players, fans, because they let me know as I was walking back. Dr. Cavil, you see that? And then the Texas Southern fans, boy, they were just like ready to put moving buses and everything out there. They were done. Prairie fans were just like, we told you, let everybody know out there. So let me openly say now to all those folks, I was wrong. Apologize. Prairie View, as you said, BJ Jones, they are still in the football business, and they look like they will be a part of this race all the way to the end, which will make it really interesting and fascinating. We'll see them a couple of weeks against Grambling. That'll be another marker as they continue to go down, and then you get that home game against Southern, which should be really fun. But a little ahead of ourselves now to get in there, get in some of these games as we talk, get Mike back in here with some of this faces off. when you talk about the game with Southern, let's start there. The game with Southern in terms of that matchup, Florida Memorial. Obviously, there was no question about Southern would they win, but in terms of what they would be able to do and the way they would win in that matchup. So let's break that game down a little bit, BJ Jones. What did you see in terms of that game, particularly on the offensive side of the ball? And I'm really curious about the defensive side of the ball. Let's start on the offensive side of the ball first.
Well, our offensive side of the ball, Southern is going to be explosive. They're going to use every inch of the field, and they're going to go fast. There is a lot of playmakers on the offensive side of the football. We're talking about upwards of 13, 14 people had receptions on yesterday. You saw how many people carried the ball. A lot of playmakers, a lot on that side of the football. And keep in mind, the guys who were projected as starters or first string players did not play after the first quarter. Those second string guys did not play after the second quarter. So Southern went deep on both sides of the football into that ball game, and it was nice to see some young guys, kind of get some depth, and really on the defensive side of football, continue to play with pride to get the goose egg, to get the shutout on Florida Memorial.
When you look at some of the depth in that game, I thought it was intriguing in terms of what they were able to do on offense. They just made sure there was no question. They put up 42 points in the first quarter. Then, as I imagine, as you talked about, they let a lot of the backups play, and they still were able, even trying to run the ball. Did they run the clock in any time of the game?
No, Florida Memorial, it was asked at the half. Florida Memorial coach vehemently said no. That's not what he wanted. So that was the deal. And Florida Memorial came in, and there was some things said before the game by the coaching staff and players that could be seen as disrespectful and so forth. So
Yeah.
So I think that the coaches were saying, "Hey, we'll continue to run our offense. Southern didn't put the ball in the air, but we just gonna continue to run the offense and let the cards fall when they may."
Yeah, when you talk about that, while they were still part of that, as Mike jumped in here, they rushed for 397 yards amongst 7 players. Couple of them getting almost double digit in carries. You had Braylon Morgan getting 9 for 85 yards and a touchdown. Rod Sims had 10 carries on 84 yards for 2 touchdowns. The same with Kendrick Rhymes. Of those 3, you think he's going to continue to run multiple backs, or does it look like that one of those will end up being a feature back there?
Oh, Coach Lewis said, "Man, the running back room is deep. He's gonna use all of them." Yeah, so you're gonna continue to see that.
Going to you, Mike. Let's break down a little bit in terms of the Prairie View game. As you had your eyes on that, what were your thoughts in terms of that matchup? What did Prairie View get done that stood out to you in terms of getting it done against Texas Southern 40-23 in that matchup?
Well, first of all, good morning. Hopefully you can hear me now. I take it, right?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, apologize for that. Had some difficulties here. And the other thing, it was just great to be back in a football atmosphere and environment with all the excitement. My takeaways, I was blown away with the defensive dominance of Prairie View A&M. I mean, you expected and you heard talk of Andrew Body and what he could do. I don't think he had over 60 total yards. They were able to dominate from start to finish. There were a few mess ups, the opening kickoff return, of course. But other than that, it was a Prairie View dominated game. So hats off to Prairie View. Bubba McDowell had a plan. I think he channeled his inner Dion and said, he didn't say, "I want some dogs. I want some cats. Go get him." So they went after him. They definitely had a spy on him all night. And they were able, and he's clearly the focal point of that Texas Southern offense, and they were not able to get anything sustainable all night.
Yes, going to you, BJ Jones, on that, as Mike alluded to, Andrew was 7 of 17 for 53 yards in an interception. Texas Southern just rushed for 113 yards. Obviously, receiving, they just had 53. And they did rush for 2 touchdowns, short field. But on that line, Prairie was just able to push Texas Southern around. I was amazed about how physical they were in the game. They rushed for 388 yards on 5 touchdowns. They literally pushed the ball down the field. Trezon got hurt, and the backup came in and threw a pick 6. And they couldn't do anything after that in terms of the following down. And Texas Southern was able to get a field goal to, make it more respectable. But if it wasn't for that, it would have even been a worse blowout because I didn't see any way where Texas Southern was going to stop them. They got the last drive and literally pushed down the field. It was like they almost tapped out in terms of what they were able to do. So, BJ Jones, in terms of that, you kind of talked about how impressive that was, but break it down a little more in terms of what you saw, particularly for me on the physicality on the line.
I'm just gonna come around and say it. Texas Southern is bad up front. I thought that they were improving a year ago, particularly towards the latter half of the season. They're bad up front, offensive line and defensive line. I can't stress it enough. Defensively, they were bad before. They may be worse now. It's. I think you have the quarterback. You have a guy that can make the plays, and they couldn't protect him. They could not protect him. It was a rough day back there for him, and it was so bad to the point I started getting calls. They was like, "You think Andrew Body goes into the portal after this game?" It was that bad, and I don't know how the Texas Southern people are feeling down there in Houston, but this cannot be a fun Sunday morning for one Clarence McKinney.
No, I can tell you, as we went back into the tailgate lot, there was a lot of festivity. I mean, it rained, but people still were ready to go. They packed the stadium, 30-minute lightning delay. We got another one of those. They had to leave. Many of them still came back in. They were chumming a bit, and they wanted to get it. But as you walk through their representation, when Texas Southern was there, they were ready. But a couple of them that were there afterwards, oh, man, they were fired hot, as you said, fire red hot. They were not pleased about what was going on there. Let's scoot back on and go to the other side of the conference. This was a Division II FCS matchup between Alabama State and Miles College. The score was a little closer than it was until late in the game, where Miles made a later run in there. Alabama State gets it done 21-13. They now move to 2-0 quietly, if there's such a thing. Looking pretty solid, at least in terms of what they've been able to do, especially when you talk about a new coach getting in there. Let me go back to you, BJ Jones, in terms of the start out with this Alabama State Miles College as they got it done in that game. What did you see as you analyzed what took place between the Miles Golden Bears and the Hornets of Alabama State?
Alabama State jumped up big. It was 21-0 in the first quarter. You saw Davis go out early. And Miles Crawley come in, and he engineers 2 drives, and he jumped up, 21-0. He actually looked good. Was the actual player of the game in the Labor Day Classic there was Miles Crawley. And then offensively, it's like Alabama State kind of took the win out of their own selves, whether it was turnovers or they fumbled the ball, and then they couldn't run the ball effectively. Receivers couldn't get open. They didn't look good offensively late. I think Miles shut them out for 3 quarters, and then Miles just started taking advantage of, different opportunities that they had, and actually had the ball late with an opportunity to go down and score and try to get a 2-point conversion. So I think with Alabama State, man, you're happy to be 2-0 going into UCLA next week, but they have some football games coming up.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how long they can continue to push forward and get better. As you said, Demetrius Davis just had 1 pass, 14 yards, but it was a touchdown. Miles Crawley came in there 9 of 18, 162 yards, a touchdown. Did have a costly interception where it did get a little interesting late in that game, but they pretty much controlled that game. Mike, what are your thoughts on this Alabama State Miles Golden Bears matchup as Alabama State quietly, as I said, gets to 2-0 with 2 nice non-conference wins.
Yeah, it was a quiet win. I mean, you look at, D. Davis getting hurt. A couple of things stood out. I mean, I was first saw this game and I was like, all right, this is going to be an Alabama State game all the way through. And then you see Miles start climbing back in. And there were inefficiencies on the Alabama State defense. They had 10 penalties for 110 yards. So the other thing is their defense was able to kind of hold the lead. I think they only allowed Miles, 3 yards per pass and 2.5 per rush, or 2.7 yards per rush. You put those together to put those 2 functions, and that's 6 yards per play. So their defense basically kind of held out, but it just didn't look good going, I'd say, into the second half for Alabama State. They have a big opponent coming up, but yeah, they're quietly 2-0, and you wonder, how hurt, what's the status with D. Davis? But I still think if he's healthy, they're gonna be a problem.
Yeah, let's get into our first break. We'll get back. We'll get into some of these tough non-conference losses, particularly that Stephen F. Austin, Alcorn State. They're right there, just could not find a way to get it done. The Tennessee State, Eastern Washington was another game where Tennessee State looked like they offensively could do pretty much what they wanted to, but defensively couldn't get a couple of key stops when they threw out that game that would have really put them in even a better position to get it done. So let's take this first break and get back and get into some of those games as we move forward.
Montgomery, Alabama has been making history by people who had the courage to stand up for change. Today, this riverfront city has been reborn, embracing the past and looking forward to the future. From the National Memorial for Peace and Justice to the stage of the Alabama Shakespeare Festival, this is where history was and is made. We are proud to call Montgomery home, and together, we can be the change.
If you think all pads are exactly the same, think again. This is Always Ultra Thins reinvented with the Always Triple Protection System. This pad wicks gushes 90% faster, absorbs even more so you can feel dry, and locks odors in. Rethink your pad for up to 100% leak-free and odor-free comfort with the totally reinvented Always Ultra Thins. This is always like never before.
Now, you can't live in Texas and not have a good red meat blend. Texas Cowboy Dust is designed for steak and other red meats. It's out to be my most popular spice blend, made with onions, peppers, ground mushrooms, pink salt, and other spices. Texas Cowboy Dust also goes great with chicken, pork, vegetables, and adds a restaurant quality sheen to gravies and sauces.
It's like a loot machine. All around town, people trying to get down.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
You seen the first Gatorade bath head coach McDowell, I should say, Bubba McDowell, he got it done yesterday again. They were very excited and very proud to play for him, boy. It was some big time folks where you could tell that they had a chip on their shoulder. So it'll be fascinating to see as that continues. But let's get back in here. Let's start off with the Stephen F. Austin Alcorn State game. Boy, this is another one of those games where this is the one I picked if we were going to get a non-conference win in terms of against, you know, a HWCU, a historically white college university. Being at home, this is the one I thought that there was a real chance to get it. And late touchdown by Stephen F. Austin. Alcorn still had 2 minutes left in the game and could not quite get it done to maybe go down the field and put up that final winning touchdown. Either way, the defense couldn't get that key stop late in that matchup, and the offense couldn't get a key score late in the game. Mike, what are your thoughts when you break that down? Where did Alcorn just fall a little short in terms of not being able to finish with that?
So, if I was watching the game off and on, and I was like, man, Alcorn State's going to pull it away, pull away. I think they went into the half, maybe 24 to 10 or something like that.
That was it.
Yeah, and I wondered if there was a little slippage of the defense. So I started looking at some of the stats, and they were able to hold Stephen F. Austin to a smaller gainage per yard on the run and on the pass in the first half. It seemed like there was a little slip in the second, because I think if you look at it in the third quarter, Stephen F. Austin, they opened up their offense. They scored 14, pretty quick. And they, I don't know if the offense sputtered. There were some inefficiencies. It seemed like the opposite happened with Alcorn offense. So it looked like two teams going different directions. I mean, if you look at it, I think Alcorn State had altogether 426 yards, but I believe the bulk majority of that was in the first half. So they still remain competitive. Don't get me wrong. It just seemed like something happened in the second quarter that it didn't have that same luster. Their yards per pass dropped significantly in the second half. So I think if time of possession, they held it less in the second half. I think total was 36 minutes for Stephen F. Austin, where it was when it's all said and done, 23 minutes. Alcorn State was able to put together some drives. It just, when they needed that last drive, they just felt the time just ran off the clock. But I thought it was an impressive game regardless by Alcorn State. Before that, the drive to really go ahead, maybe it was third quarter to jump back in the lead, was an impressive drive. But it's just that last drive, they just ran out of time.
Yes, PJ Jones, look, see your breakdown on this as well. Just for those that are listening, they rushed for 285 yards. Now, Stephen F. Austin was much more balanced. They could only rush for 153 yards, but they threw for 226 yards as Trey Self got 3 touchdowns. Aaron Allen, interesting to see what that looks like. He had a touchdown, but an interception. But Javon Howard, Duffy, as we know, Nico Duffy continues to do his thing. He had 11 carries for 73 yards, but Javion Howard was the big carrier with 21 carries, 194 yards, and a touchdown. Where did you see things start to go wrong? Second half, obviously, they gave up 21 points where they could only score 3, including 0 in the third quarter, not to be able to answer the 14 that Stephen F. Austin Lumberjacks put up. Go ahead, BJ. You're on mute.
Oh, number one thing that Doc talking about that is they allowed the receiver from Stephen F. Austin to get lost in coverage. I mean, if you look at some of those touchdown passes, man, they were wide open. They were wide open, and you can't do that with a team like Stephen F. Austin. That's what they want to do. And then offensively, man, it was just shooting themselves in the foot. That run game was amazing in the first half. Was not as strong in the second half. And this game was literally the tale of two halves. You had one half which was dominated by Alcorn State, and then you had the next half, which the Lumberjacks and Stephen F. Austin pretty much dominated. And for Alcorn, this again, it coulda, woulda, shoulda. They had the same opportunity with McNeese a few years ago. Now you have a nationally ranked Stephen F. Austin comes into the reservation. You have it again, and now your next two games you got to go to Tulane, and you have another shot at McNeese. Well, I think this Alcorn State team, I think they're going to be okay. I think that this is going to be a team that's going to be right there in the thick of the Western Division race when we start talking about the Southwestern Athletic Conference.
I'm going to stay with you, BJ Jones, to talk about this other one. Was another one of those interesting matchups where you let it get away. That Tennessee State getting defeated 36-29 by Eastern Washington Eagles on that red carpet out there, if you would. It seemed like Tigers, from what I watched, and I pretty much watched that game the whole time, they were able to do what they want to do offensively. They do some big plays, certainly could run the ball. They ran for 290 yards. Only allowed 126, but the backside of that defense in terms of passing, they gave up 348 yards and 5 touchdowns to Gunner from Eastern Washington as he just did what he wanted to do. What were your thoughts in terms of that game?
Well, offensively, Tennessee State looks good, man. That offensive line can move some people. Man, they're good. Defensively, man, you got to get a pass rush against Eastern Washington. That's their forte. They throw the ball. You think about Mike Leach at Washington State. That's what Eastern Washington does down on the carpet, man. They don't play much defense, but man, they can score in a hurry. And Tennessee State didn't get a pass rush, which was a recipe for disaster. And then Eastern Washington just picked them apart. And then Tennessee State still had a chance, opportunity right there at the end, and didn't capitalize on it. But very impressed with Tennessee State in this football team.
Yeah, as you alluded to, there were several times in the game where they got some third downs and just could not come up with the big stop. And they just would make the play, and they'd find a way to score and answer a lot of what Tennessee State was doing. Mike, what were your thoughts on this Tennessee State Eastern Washington game from your perspective?
Well, much the same. I think the ineffective ability to get after the passer. I mean, Eastern Washington had 350 yards in the air alone, another 126 rushing. So that inability in and of itself says that Tennessee State, as impressive as they may look and throughout the rest of the season, they just weren't able to get after the quarterback. Second, discipline. Look at 7. Eastern Washington only had 6 or 7 penalties for 50 yards, whereas Tennessee State had 12, 13, and I'm kind of paraphrasing because I couldn't pull the numbers up, 12 or 13, if I recall, for just right at 100 yards. Tennessee State, for all intents and purposes, kind of shot themselves in the foot a lot of times. You look at the more penalties, but they held the ball longer. They held the ball 34 minutes, whereas Eastern Washington, even though they had more total yardage, Tennessee State, even though they had more total yardage, Eastern Washington was able to do more with less. So unfortunate opportunities that Tennessee State was unable to take advantage of. So it was impressive. I thought I was going in and out of the game, and I thought Tennessee State actually had a chance. They had some shine there. So good play from the team. I think if you look at the box score, I forget, Mr. Ellis, quarterback Ellis, had 260 yards passing. Again, Talkington from Eastern Washington had 350 yards. So that air attack really kind of killed Tennessee State.
Yeah, man. Let's take this second break. We'll come back. I want to get into that Duke Mayo Classic game where the Eagles took it to the Aggies. I think the score is not quite indicative of how that game was played. And then we'll get into that Howard game that with that vaunted late 22 points, but just not enough as Hampton gets it done at home 31-28 over Howard. North Carolina Central gets it done over the Eagles 28-13. So we'll come back after this break and break that down and talk about those games before we get into some of these key matchups today, what everybody wants to hear about, this FAMU Jackson State Fascinating to see how that goes, and it will even get bigger and better next weekend. So let's take in our second break, get back around, talk a little bit more about some of these matchups from yesterday, see what BJ Jones, the football guru, and Mike Washington, the data doctor, as some people talking those data points, see what he thinks coming out of this. Come back after this break right now.
When we invest in ourselves, our glow, our vision, our vibe, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge, featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. That's www.slowburnwaco.com.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Will with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with the professors, BJ Jones and Mike Washington. Let's get into this Howard Hampton game, the battle of the HUs. Boy, Howard, man, they just right there on the edge, can't quite put a full game together. They go down early, 14-6 at the half. Hampton comes back in the third, puts up a 7 spot, keeps Bison scoreless. Howard puts up 22 points, but they give up 10 in the fourth quarter, and that's the rest of the game as they lose 31-28. BJ Jones, in terms of this matchup, what stood out to you?
I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you, Doc. We got to the third quarter. I thought Hampton had put it away, and I kind of thought that kind of Howard was kind of done for. And then I went back and checked it, and I checked the score, and I was like, "Whoa!" Howard was making a move, and I went in and tuned into it, and Howard offensively, they have to decide what they want to be. Mm-hmm. I feel like you have these stable of running backs. Like, I understand you really couldn't use them once you got down late yesterday, man. But you gotta use them, and it seems like, man, their offensive identity, they don't know what it is. Defensively, Howard plays pretty solid. I love that the kid 10 on the defensive line. He was everywhere yesterday, particularly in the second half. But man, yesterday it just felt like they gave Hampton one. And now you're 0-2. And the schedule doesn't get any easier for Howard.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. They have some really nice schedule in terms of some intriguing opponents. They better be thankful for the Morehouse game, but if they're not careful, you'll find out, just like you kind of seen with Lane and Pine Bluff. Pine Bluff got out of there, but that was a close one. Just finding a way to get it done. But Mike, what are your thoughts in terms of this Howard and Hampton matchup?
I don't know. I can't put my hands on it because I mean here's why. Statistically, if you look at it, this should have been Howard's game. Okay. You look at total yards, yeah, it's kind of even 430 to Hampton's 484. Passing 340 yards, 10 yards per pass, whereas Hampton only had 6. You look at rushing attempts. I think you're starting to get it. Rushing attempts, yards. That's where it fell off. That average dropped off because I was like, what happened here? Time of possession, Howard. And if you look at the yards per rush up until I'd say the end of the third, going into the fourth quarter, that number was in favor of Howard. By the time we finished the game, that number had flip-flopped to in favor of Hampton. 10 yards per rush, only 2.3 for Howard. So you wonder, did they just, I don't know, fall asleep at the wheel? Did they slip? I mean, because for all intents and purposes, really, Howard played a heck of a game. I thought this was Howard's opportunity to get a win, but it just unfortunately didn't happen. And the numbers don't really show it when they show it, on a total game basis. But if you look at that third and fourth quarter set of data, there's a lot of data points that show that lead to one or two things. Either Hampton just started playing better, or Howard just kind of slowly gave up the lead, not knowing, or lost some efficiency in the third and fourth quarter. So I can't still put my hands to it, but it was a good solid win for Hampton and a tough loss for Howard.
Yeah, you talk about the MEAC in this case losing a game, but they got it back when you go into that Duke Mayo game with North Carolina Eagles, really taking it to A&T. First quarter was one of those games, 7-7. Then Central put up 14 points in the second quarter and only gave up 6. So you go in the half, leading 21-13. They come back in the third and put up another, and that was essentially the game as they win 28-13. BJ Jones, what were your thoughts in terms of this matchup? And I'm fascinated on your top 5 Tuesdays, your Twitter Spaces, how that's going to go this week. Because I know you asked a question, and I was fascinated to hear it. You said, what happens if you all do not win this game? And some people were quite frank with you. And I was like, wow. Yeah, so I'm fascinated to hear what's going to go on Tuesday, because I'm sure there's not going to be some happy Aggies out there. Some very excited Eagles in terms of that matchup. So go ahead, DJ Jones. What's your thoughts on that?
In 1966, Howlin' Wolf released a song called Going Down Slow. And that is a microcosm of the North Carolina A&T football program. They've been going down slow. And I've been saying this for a couple of years. This is not the same run Broadway football team. This football team is undisciplined. You saw that. You saw chinks of that against FAMU when they had players get ejected a couple of years ago. You've seen the penalty yardage. They're undisciplined. Now you've lost key pieces of that staff. Courtney Cord is now gone. You lose your running back coach is now the head coach at Fort Valley State. This program has been going down slow. And I predicted North Carolina Central would beat them. Didn't know that it was going to be in this fashion. I felt like North Carolina Central was kind of rising. When you look at it, this game could have been a lot worse. North Carolina Central turned the ball over and some opportunities where they could have stretched this thing out. But if you're North Carolina A&T, man, you got to try to figure out what's going on. Now, there was a bright spot. That younger kid, the quarterback, is the real deal. He is the real deal. But, man, everywhere else, man, you got to go to Fargo, North Dakota next week, and then you got to go to Duke after that. I mean, the Aggies may be staring 0-4 square in the face before they even get to conference play.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest thanks they can have is they're in the Big South for conference play. You only have the 5 games you play in the second half of the season. But if this team, hopefully not too demoralized, because it can get ugly pretty quick, and you got to see them fight back and see what that looks like. We've seen it done. South Carolina State had that tough early schedule. Everything that would go on went wrong. They finally got the win before they go right into conference play and they get it done there. But on Thursday, we had Joshua Sims Sr. here, and he told everybody that would listen to it what was going to happen. So, Mike, what were your thoughts in terms of this game? I watched it, and I was just like, man, Eagles look good.
Well, big surprise. let's back up a little bit. Going into the season, who was picked to win, at least to be at the top of their division? Let's wait for it. The North Carolina A&T Aggies. They're expected to bounce back this season. They suffered a big L last season. I think they only had 12, 13 touchdown passes. So they had a new quarterback coming in. They still had some big names, Jermaine McDaniel. The guy had 15 sacks in 2019, or at least over 15 or more sacks the last couple of seasons. Linebacker Jacob Roberts, cornerback Karan. They still had some good players, and they were expected to build up and to make a good run in the Big South. However, fast forward to however, data points. Fast forward. I told you guys in the break, I was not surprised that North Carolina Central won. Just in the way they won. I mean, that game, if you watch that game, it looked more than the score that's indicated on the scoreboard. Data points alone here. I mean, third down efficiencies. I think North Carolina Central was an order of magnitude better. That's execution. That's discipline. You look at how they passed the ball. It's not that they got 200 but they spread the ball evenly across 3 or 4 receivers, and no one stood out. But between Taylor Smith and Barnes, they were spreading the ball pretty evenly, so that looked like a balanced offense. And you look on the A&T side, you had Jaeger, you had Jaeger as the leading rusher and the leading passer. He's good, but he's the next leading rusher only got 20 yards, and after that, there was nobody else. So I was just surprised in the fashion that North Carolina Central, that defense, man, they gave North Carolina A&T a day and a half of trouble. So,
yeah, great point. So I'm going to get in some of these scores that stood out to me. The Bulldogs, Bowie State just continues to get it done. They get a big win. New Haven, they win 27-20. People will question, see where Bowie State would be. A lot of them picked them still at the top, but you still had that question mark, at least coming out of the gates. They get a big win. Home game, but they get it done against New Haven 27-20. So I thought that kind of stood out. You had that Edward Waters, Clark Atlanta. Clark Atlanta gets on the board and gets a big win, 39-34, as they go on the road to get that done to Edward Waters. So Edward Waters is down to 0-2 as they are in the picture there. Langston, Oklahoma, 48-13 at home over Oklahoma Panhandle State. That was a pretty good one. I know some people kind of questioning to see what Langston was. I told you, I believe they're strong. They're just quietly out in the West, and they just keep chugging. They were disappointed how they ended last season, but they found to get a win there. That was pretty good. So I thought that was a big one in terms of a crucial win. You had Benedict getting it done for the SIAC over the CIAA, 52-14 as they stomp out the Vikings. That was a pretty impressive one, just stood out there. Henry Frazier III's debut, rough start. Lenore Ryan's pretty strong, so you can see what happened there. They lose 38-13 in terms of that matchup. Morehouse kind of stuck with West Alabama, but couldn't get it done 24-16. One to keep your eyes on there. Savannah State, a lot of people had eyes on Savannah State. Transitioning coach, it didn't start out least well in terms of his debut at Southeastern. Trummels, just beats up on Savannah State, the Tigers, 34-14. That game was in Savannah in terms of what it looked like there. So that was interesting. Arkansas Baptist brings back their football team, and they get a big win, open it up. They win 31-12 over Texas College. So that's one to think about. Albany, as Mike likes to say, they say in those parts. They keep pushing forward as they get a big win over Mississippi College, 28-14 to start off the road there. So I want to give a shout out. Fayetteville State, looks like they're solid. They continue to do it. They get a big win over UNC Pembroke, winning 15-13. Slugfest there, but they hold on for the victory. So I thought I would give some love to mid-major programs out there with some pretty big scores. You see them. So you got some big wins there. So it'll be interesting as we continue to see the road gets on there. Kentucky State does fall to Delta State 33-10. So pretty good there. West Virginia State, victory over Shippensburg 29-6. Obviously, Virginia Union does everything they want to Virginia Lynchburg 77-0. It's going to be a long season for Virginia Lynchburg as they play a lot of MEAC teams too. So if that's in the indication, it's going to be a tough one. With that, let's take our last break, come back in and talk about the key matchups of today as we get on the board and let you know our thoughts down in Miami, as this should be a good one. That's a 2:00 p.m. kickoff, Miami Gardens Hard Rock Cafe between Jackson State and FAMU. I have it as a 2 versus 3. Orange Blossom Classic 2, and it is on ESPN 2. You also have a game over there at Central State, Winston-Salem State, the Black College Football Hall of Fame Classic in Canton, Ohio. That'll be fascinating. And we got the Red Tails on ESPNU. That's a 6:00 game between Tuskegee and Fort Valley State. The Central State and Winston-Salem State game is at 3:00 Central for those that are going to be looking to check that out. Try to follow it if you would. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this break and break down those 3 games of the day before I get these gentlemen to tell me what games we need to watch out for next week. As you get into week 2, it's moving that fast. Takes everything to get here, but then when it churns, it churns. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this flash break.
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge, featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. That's www.slowburnwaco.com.
Itchy, squirmy, scratchy, family not getting clean? Get Charmin Ultra Strong. Go get 'em! It just cleans better. With a diamond weave texture, your family can use less while still getting clean.
Goodbye, itchy squirm.
Hello, cream bottom.
We all go. Why not enjoy the go with Charmin?
Bounty versus the old family dish towel. Drying with a fresh sheet of Bounty leaves your hands cleaner than a used dish towel that can carry and redistribute food residue. So ditch the dish towel for better hand hygiene. Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
Press the analytic data with your hip-hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna loud, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside HBCU Sports Lab. Before we get in these 3 matchups, let me give a shout out to LaShawn Harris, Emma Price, jumping in here, Jimmy Wilson. Congratulations, Jimmy. Good win yesterday. I'm in the lab. Let's go. Anthony Johnson. He shout out to G. Boom Holly, said he needs those picks from last night. We got Kerry Mickens say bully ball equals PD football. Yeah, that's a good point. It surely was. They just ran all over the Tigers. Trying to work on them now as he gets some pitches out. G. Boom Holly says he's getting them out. Emma Price is good morning. Dennis Hudson is in here. Chuck Hunt. Kerry Mickens, George Suggs got in here. Karen Griffin. Erlene Collier. Greg Williams cleaning up the RV, listening to HBCU Sports Lab. Football season is here. My favorite part of the year. Yes, yes. Put in that work with the RV. I know they were out big time in Southern last night. Let me give a shout out. You know, we always, Eric Dooley, he clean. I had no problem with that. I always like his style. They came out with them suits, BJ Jones, walking in. What do you think of them suits? I know you're trying to get your hands on at least the jacket. That was clean.
Man,
tell him you need to find out who the tailor is. What you
hey,
thought?
I know the tailor. That's a killer boy about it. I know the tailor.
Oh, wow. Man, I even thought about getting me one that's so clean. Not for real.
Man, they was clean though, man. Man, they look good, man. A real professional look, man. Hey, I mean, I knew about it this summer. They decided to go with the full suit instead of just the blazer. I was like, oh man, this is gonna be nice, man. But I really liked it, man. I really liked it.
Yeah, I knew you would. I was like, that's all I thought about when I see it. BJ Jones and shout out to Juan C. Hill. He was running around there, staying dry, even in the rain. The man don't get wet. How you do that, Juan? He says, "Good morning, Jerry Johnson." Who else we got in here? Leonard is in the house. Reuben Hogan, Douglas Robinson, Michael Lee is in here. J Mac. I've been in the gump for the Red Tails Classic. Okay, so we're going to get some good pictures from J Mac down there. I know Karen Griffin, Langston 4813, if she puts it out there. I know it. Professor not ready for one of these ascots. I hear you, but everything else is nice. Charles Bishop is checking us out as he gets ready. Charles Bishop, we're going to talk a little bit. If you want to jump in here, go ahead. We finna do our last segment to talk about the matchup there. So if you want a piece of this, you can share a little bit in there. We'll let Roy to let you in, checking out things. Edwin Dwight Moore jumping in here. Let's start it out with the Red Tail Classic, Tuskegee, Fort Valley State. It's on ESPN. Tuskegee got dump truck last year by Fort Valley State, but there's a coaching change. There's a new coach that moves over from Miles College. Will that make a difference? I'm sure, but will it be enough for them to get the win? Starting with you, BJ Jones. What are your thoughts on this Tuskegee Fort Valley State game?
Man, Tuskegee coming in with a lot of momentum. Coach Reggie Ruffin was able to bring in a lot of talent. Brought the top two rushers from Miles College last year. They're now at Tuskegee. Man, he was able to bring in the quarterback transfer from Alabama State. They were able to kind of infuse that program with some talent, and they got some positive momentum. They got a lot of new construction going on at Tuskegee, particularly when you start talking about athletics, which has been a complaint from Tuskegee alumni for decades now. So I think they got a lot of positive momentum. Fort Valley State also has a coaching change as well. If I'm leaning Tuskegee right now, I think it's going to be a highly contested game, but I'm leaning Tuskegee.
Nice lean with the lean. You tend to lean right more than wrong, so let me think about that one too. Mike, what are your thoughts in terms of that Red Tail class?
I'd say not so fast, my friend. Tuskegee, this is the second. Fort Valley beat them 30 to in the first Red Tails Classic. But the Golden Tigers do lead the all-time series. Was it 30 to 20 or something like that? Tuskegee is coming off of what, 3 in a million season last year, which it went 2-4 in the fourth quarter in the Western Division. So I don't know. They bought in a new a lot of pieces, as you allude to. They bought in a new coach. I don't know if that's enough to overcome that gap that they had in last year's game. Although that's only one data point. Fort Valley went what 5-5, 3-3, and placed fourth in the SIAC. How big a jump do we expect them to make? So, I'm not going to go with the Tuskegee team this year. I like to. Sounds good. They made a lot of changes, but I got to go with Fort Valley. Not because my wife and father-in-law is there, and they're probably going to go back and look at this as well. But just because the data point says that's a big jump, so.
Smart man, happy wife, happy life. We know about that one, so we'll let you do that. Charles says he's sitting here with the walkthrough, just looking in and checking us out. Appreciate you. Much love to you. As we get all the data points from Charles Bishop on Tuesday, should be interesting. As we sure will tune in. Before we get to that big game, though, we got another one. Central State, Winston-Salem State. This is another SIAC CIAA matchup. Earlier, Benedict got one for the SIAC. Will they be 2-0, or will we get a split one? This one is in Canton, Ohio, Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium. As I said, 3 o'clock Central Standard Time, the Black College Football Hall of Fame Classic. That should be fascinating. Let me stick with you, Mike. What are your thoughts on this Central State, Winston-Salem State match?
Yeah, I think I go with Winston-Salem State. I think they're always a strong team. They bring a strong defensive front to it. So I'll pick Winston-Salem State over Central in this one.
Shout out to Drew as he's checking out as well. Getting around here, man, big time people, big time plays. BJ Jones, who's gonna make the big time plays in this Central State, Winston-Salem State matchup?
Man, I think it's gonna be Stephen J. Gaither's Winston-Salem State Rams, man. I think that they are, they decided to hold over the coach, interim coach. A lot of people didn't make a lot of people happy, but I think they do return a lot of talent. Winston-Salem State, and we've seen Winston-Salem State when they can hit on all cylinders. This is a team that almost beat North Carolina Central a year ago. I think that they're going to come in this game focused. I think that the now current head coach former interim coach twice, has something to prove, and I'm going to lean. I like the Rams in this.
With that, let's get in here. Sticking with you, let's go into this Jackson State FAMU matchup. What is going to go down in this matchup? We find out now that Land is back on the field. He did get some reprieve from the NCAA, as well as quite a few other players. It'll be interesting to see how much difference that will make. We saw what FAMU did against North Carolina Central. That has a lot of people excited, although with everything going on. But now they have some of that on the film. How much of that will make a difference to you, B.J. Jones, in this matchup between Jackson State and FAMU?
Man, it's definitely an advantage when you talk about Dennis Thurman defensively when he's able to scheme up. Having that film on this FAMU offense. But it's also a disadvantage for Jackson State because I always tell people this, man, you don't know what you have until you line up against someone in a different color jersey. And I heard people say, oh, yeah, man, we look good. We look good against you. Yes, you do. You look good when you don't have a focal point to compare that to. So I think that's the advantage for FAMU. They have gone out live bullets and played an entire ball game, and I've had to come back and correct some things. Right now, Jackson State really don't know what they have to correct, what's their strengths or what's their weaknesses. So that's an advantage towards FAMU.
Watch Charles want to jump in now.
Watch, yeah, I know, right?
But with that said, it's a good point of this, and don't take this the wrong way because folks, Jackson State gonna jump in here. I said we saw that with Texas Southern. Everything told us what we saw in terms of, and they put in the work. I've seen it in terms of the off season, the summer coming back, and it just did not transfer on the field in terms of that. Obviously, Jackson State is a different beast. With that said, let me go to Mike and see his thoughts on this matchup between FAMU and Jackson State. Will it live up to the hype is the first question. Last year's game ended up being a classic. We saw them get the lead leg, and Jackson State held on to the rest of the conference, and FAMU did their part, but it was just not enough after losing that first matchup 7-6. Crazy type of game. What are your thoughts on this one, Mike?
A couple of data points. Different year, whole year later. We know the story last year. Difference is Jackson State's put in a lot of work. Got a whole new offensive line. They got Travis Hunter. However, FAMU comes to the game with a Vanderbilt transfer who showed us that he is as advertised. They'll be looking a lot better. They got some key players back. They got Land back, of course. Here's a thing that I found on defense. FAMU, they'll need to contain that passing attack. But a year ago, the Rattlers were the only team that didn't allow Jackson State to reach the end zone through the air. So what was the secret sauce in that approach defensively? I think that can't be forgotten. So again, they'll have Bowler and Land coming back. Key. They've proven that, they can compete despite all the turmoil that they've had over the last year. So interesting data points, how they match up. I think it will live up to the hype. If you look at the over and under, most folks have Jackson State winning like 21-10, 21-15. I don't know where they're getting their numbers from, but I actually see FAMU maybe edging this one out.
B.J. Jones, which direction are you going? Who do you think ultimately pulls it out?
I'm going to roll with Jackson State, but I would not be shocked to see FAMU win this one. This is why. If Jackson State isn't significantly better on the offensive line, FAMU will win this football game going away. All right? If they're not, and when I say significantly better, they have to be significantly better to win this football game. I'm going with Jackson State because I roll with the champ because someone beats them. And for some reason, Jackson State has always had FAMU's number. You look at the days, the Hail Mary, you look at the days where Willie Simmons, when he first got to FAMU, Jackson State FAMU oftentimes has had the better team on paper, and it hadn't made a difference. Jackson State has found a way to get it. I think that may continue today, but trust me, I would not be shocked to see the Rattlers put one on them today.
Great point. Edwin White Moore has something similar. He says JSU had a new offensive line last year. After the string, what hasn't changed is the offensive line coach. Good point. And we'll see that data point and see what it looks like in terms of this matchup. In terms of next week, before we turn it off, these are some of the games that stick out to me that should be interesting to keep your eyes on. Bowie State goes on the road. Saginaw Valley State talked about a little bit of that matchup, what they're going to do off the field in terms of that matchup. But we want to see what Bulldogs are they able to continue to make these statements. You got the Austin Peay versus Mississippi Valley State. You got a South Carolina State versus Bethune-Cookman. That's on Daytona Beach, Florida. It's always a big matchup. Bethune-Cookman always comes to play against South Carolina State. It's a MEAC SWAC, another chance, another data point between those teams. Should be interesting to see what that looks like to some degree. So I'm fascinated that. Before we can even get this game in, you got the Jackson State, Tennessee State matchup there. You got Grambling State versus Northwestern State. That's in Shreveport, Louisiana. In terms of that matchup, that's going to be fascinating. Keep your eyes on that for me. Allen versus Johnson C. Smith, another SIAC-CIAA matchup. We'll continue to kind of keep you abreast on that. Hampton, Tuskegee, as you look at it. Morgan State, Townsend, in terms of what's going on there. You got North Carolina Central, Winston-Salem State. I'm fascinated about that matchup. You got Prairie View on the road to Abilene Christian. Tough non-conference matchup, but a good one to get another chance against the FCS team. Will Prairie View be the one to get it done? They're one of the last programs that are able to get FCS win. They play a lot of them, so they get 3 chances because they have Lamar as well on the schedule in terms of what that looks like. And we'll follow those throughout the year. That's pretty much some of the key ones. Fort Valley State, Kentucky State, in terms of their conference matchup. Of those games, or another one that you want to pull on the table, BJ Jones, which of those matchup kind of piques your interest in terms of what you look for pushing forward the next week already?
Definitely Bethune-Cookman and South Carolina State. That one definitely jumps out to me. Also, man, Prairie View, man. See, can Prairie View keep that positive momentum going up against Abilene Christian? And then, of course, man, Jackson State and Tennessee State, man. I think that's going to be an amazing matchup there. And we'll see how Jackson State does today. And they'll kind of give me a little bit more as we go into that matchup next week.
I feel the same way. Those are the ones that kind of stood out to me among a couple of other ones. Let's go to you, Mike Washington. What are your thoughts on some key matchups as we get into next week, week 2?
First, I always like a strong SWAC MEAC matchup. It'll be an interesting data point to see who wins that game, but more importantly, how they win that game. So that South Carolina State Bethune-Cookman game looks very interesting. You mentioned the Jackson State game versus Tennessee. Tennessee State showed at least me something against Eastern Washington to show that they can play. So we'll see how strong a game contest that is in the Liberty Bowl. So I'm interested in that one. I'm interested in the Bowie State because I think they had to score 20 or 21 points in the fourth quarter to come back and beat New Haven. Bowie State is traditionally strong. It'll be interesting to see if they still have the sauce of years past. So those 3 games kind of stand out to me.
I like all those. One more that I'm going to push out there I think is a little interesting, too, is that Albany State going on the road to FAMU in terms of Tallahassee. That will be a fascinating. One is with the big game, kind of had that letdown, whether FAMU wins or not. You go in there, can they get back up against what's going to be a game Albany State team that's very talented, but they're going to be looking forward to play that game. So that's another one that to me is a little watch out when you look at that FCS Division II kind of matchups, which way it will go. That'll do it for us today. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports, coming from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Again, we want to thank you for listening to us. Mike Washington and Charles Bishop, as we are every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 o'clock Central Standard Time, and Sunday morning at 9 o'clock. We'll be back on Tuesday to break down a little bit and give you some insight of what took place with these Sunday matchups. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. It's DrKenyattacavil. That's Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Inside HBCU Sports Lab 1 on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube for Inside HBCU Sports Lab. Like and subscribe. Dream big. Continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Mike?
Horse.
DJ?
Lecture.
Roy?
Leave it to the family. Leave it to the rattler to mess up.
Man, appreciate y'all. Roy was on it. He's on it. Took him a little bit.